And we'll go right into it.
Oh,
Facebook made a change to limit some pages from going live. All right. I'm going to hit go live there. All right. I guess I can't go live there.
where?
To the Linchpin Funnels page, but to the Facebook page, to my page, we are live. What is going on, everyone? We haven't started yet. We will in just a moment. Kind of making sure all the AV stuff is good. The streams are good. And I think we're ready to go.
Yeah.
You ready?
Let's go.
I'm ready.
I'm
Jenny, you ready?
Looking good. It's live.
All right.
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Launch and Prosper podcast. It is James and Al McKern here with Linchpin Funnels. We're a full-service marketing agency focusing on building Linchpin Funnels for you because you know you love that recurring revenue. Everyone wants it. Everyone needs it. Nobody has time. We're your time. We're your leverage. We're going to do it for you. With that said, we love to talk every week about all things digital marketing, growth, being a lot of it's a husband-wife partnership kind of stuff.
But whatever that partnership looks like, right? It's not always two people in business together. It's more,
right.
It's more of sometimes there are people who are in partnership where one person will take care of all the lifestyle things while the other person dives deep and creates that financial wellness, financial certainty, right? So usually it is husband and wife in partnership, whatever color that is.
Partnership is partnership, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, absolutely. And with that said, we've got on the show today Danny Walsh, who is, he's usually wearing a hat. He has many hats, and he changes them regularly because he does everything. If you've seen Danny Walsh, you could have seen him in any number of different places. You could have seen him in Secrets of Success. You could have seen him in the ClickFunnels group. You could have seen him with his Monster Academy. There's so many different realms which Danny operates, and that's one of the things we want to talk about today. But before we get into that, we extend our welcome to Danny Walsh.
How are you doing? This is cool.
Doing so good, brother. Doing so good. Well, we wanted to have you on today because one of the things that we all must do as a personal brand, as leaders, as attractive characters, is be in new audiences, in new places, with new groups, and getting our name known and serving in new realms. And I think that you are one of the leaders in this space because I'm always seeing you pop up in different spots. So I wanted to talk to you sort of open-endedly about, like, where does that come from? How did you get started with that? Let's just start there. What makes you decide to be like, I want to be here, and what was the catalyst for all that?
That's a great question, I guess. And there's always a desire to help people to achieve their goals, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got a desire to help somebody achieve their goal, kind of makes sense that you go and find where they are. So finding where they are means getting out there in the internet, because otherwise, you're going to go to the middle of the town or the city center and you're going to get your soapbox and stand on it. But those days are over, right? You've got this streaming thing and you've got the live thing and you've got the podcast thing. So if you can leverage that and share a message that's positive and conducive with helping people achieve their goals, and you enjoy doing that stuff, then man, that's a good use of your time, because it's not just a case of popping up. It's a case of popping up and delivering, over-delivering, serving, giving people something that they can go away with and do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does make sense. And I want to know if you can pinpoint this. What was like one of the first instances in your life? Could have been when you were a kid, young adulthood, where you helped people and got a reward that was really like kind of like the aha moment of like, this is for me.
Oh man, been from washing people's cars at an early age, going out and trying to forge some crazy scheme in the community. But that did lead to actually working with challenged kids and kids in bad neighborhoods. I grew up in a bad neighborhood, right? And it was in the top 6% of the most deprived areas of England. which is pretty crazy. We fortunate through all of this stuff. We're looking at schools for our son who's going to be going to school in a year's time. So we've started the journey. The school that I went to when I was his age had like drug addicts and stuff wandering around the estate, and there was like paraphernalia, needles and things literally in the playground. There was a lot of deprivation around where I grew up. Now, thankfully, I didn't fall foul of any of that stuff, but a lot of people did. And for some reason, I always had this desire to help others. And I'm glad I did that, right? It's like to help people means that you've got to have a certain mindset. But I think just looking around and seeing the struggles that some people faced, that just kind of evolved naturally from a very young age, right? So in terms of actually getting myself out there, we always wanted to be, and myself, my buddies, we always wanted to be DJs, and we always wanted to be on radio. And even from very, very young, we would literally have like the old CB radio, right? The amateur radio with the mic, what like truckers have. Yeah. And we would like tape the thing down. So we'd just take over the channel and just go live on that, right? So there's always been a mechanism of creating, going out there, producing content. We would ring up the neighbors. Everyone had the landline phone, and we'd like put a voice on and like convince them that we were ringing from somewhere, and then record it on a tape deck and play that back on our shows. It was like we were not normal kids. And my buddy David, who he travels more than anybody I ever know. I think he's been to like 120 countries. He's actually achieved that dream of becoming a DJ, and he's over in Bahrain right now. He's been in Dubai, and we kind of set off on that crazy venture together, and we must have been like 10. So this is like, I don't know where it came from or how it developed, but once it did and we got taste for that, it's always been the case.
Yeah.
Quite crazy.
It is crazy. And you know, one of the beautiful things that we didn't necessarily intentionally do on this podcast, but it just naturally came through, which just makes sense now. But we have this beautiful privilege to work and talk and surround ourselves with people like you, people who came from really underprivileged backgrounds, and people who kind of had their road paved for them. It's kind of like, you're going to turn into nothing. You're going to follow your father's footsteps, or you're going to follow the community's footsteps, and you're going to end up shooting up on the playground. It's kind of like your outcome was inevitable when you grow up in that environment. Just like, you know, when you grow up in a I don't know, you know, in a Trump family, your outcome is inevitable. You kind of know what your path is going to be. So, and you and some of the other people that we get to talk to said, no, that's just not going to be my path, right? I'm gonna go get creative. I'm gonna do things. I'm gonna find my buddies. I'm gonna find friends who are gonna be oriented in a different direction, and that unfolded for you because and you created it, right? Because you have done well in life, right? And you're gonna do better. But I think about how old is your son?
Franklin is nearly 3 now, so he's 3.
Great. So maybe not the 3-year-old Danny, but I'm curious now, like if the 7-year-old Danny was watching this, what do you think he would think?
He'd be like, whoa, man, you can actually press this stuff and it really works. Because I like draw things on paper with like screens and buttons and things that like I wanted to become a reality. And it was, if you think back, like trying to make the technology happen, but all you had was a pen and paper, right? And it's like, how do we make this thing work? So to be able to realize that yes, this actually happened is cool, because being on screens, we did internet radio, we've DJ'd, we've been in clubs, all of that crazy stuff. Music was a big driver in a lot of these things, but we always had to kind of figure out how to make it work so we could reach people. The radio thing we had to tape the mic down, right? We had the old reel-to-reel tape recorders and trying to cut the tape with a razor blade, and you cut your finger because there was no such thing as an MP3. MP3s and digital audio came, and it's like, oh, now we can move with this. But I think the fact that we didn't really have a great deal of money, and we always had to buy, you know, what we could, secondhand stuff, and kind of create a way of doing it. It's that, oh, we want to do this, but we really don't have all the stuff. But maybe if we got some tape and things, and we kind of bodged it, it would work. And I guess that's like bootstrapping, right? In a nutshell, you've got to figure out a way, but the driver to always reach people, entertain people, help people, have fun, and I guess show people that there's potentially another way to do things. It's like, man, 3-year-old Danny or 7-year-old Danny would be like, yes, how do we make it better?
What a dream. I mean, you can actually create your own interfaces. I mean, I know you've got like magic sound buttons that you can press and sound effects come on to the stream, you know, like,
yeah,
it's come to life. Like you've arrived.
Well, quite. We got funding to buy DJ equipment when we were like 16, 17 and develop a website. And websites, you know, this is like 20 years ago, right? Longer. So 25 years maybe. And this was the kind of birth of the online business journey, because we knew to get the music out there. And I had friends who all wanted to just be a rapper or just be a DJ, but they would come to me, I guess, whether they liked me or they didn't, because they knew I could do the tech stuff. Yeah. When people were doing CD burning to like copy, you know, music probably illegally, they brought the computer to me for me to like put the CD drive in the bay and screw it back in. It is like a simplest task, but people always have this fear of technology. Oh, what happens if I break it? But I don't know. We just used to pull it out and force the glue off with a screwdriver, drag the old thing out, put the new thing in, push the ribbon in the back, and it worked. Yeah. And I've always kind of developed this, you know, press it and see what happens. And if you break it, kind of figure it out then. But a lot of people are worried about breaking it before they press it, and they never press it, right?
Yeah. And there's something behind that, Danny. You know, when we think about your journey, that resourcefulness is really what it's a muscle for you. It's a very strong muscle. Hey, I'm gonna figure it out. It doesn't matter what happens. I'm still gonna figure it out, right? And resourcefulness is a muscle that gets developed over time. We're not born with it, right? We're not taught it. We're just kind of get more daring and more comfortable with getting more resourceful until we get to a point where it's like, yeah, I'm going to figure it out. And, but there's something behind that resourcefulness, right? The resourcefulness is a skill, but there is a driver behind it. So I'm curious, what drove you to actually be resourceful? I'm going to get there no matter what.
Yeah, I think that from, again, a very early age, the way that we played, the way that we entertained ourselves would always require a degree of resourcefulness, because you didn't have money, right? Yeah. So you couldn't go and sign up for a football club with, you know, a bunch of, you know, all the facilities and the goals and different things like that already to go on to play soccer, right? Football, whichever way you look at it. So we'd have to figure out a way of creating our own pitch. And we'd have to figure out a way to create goalposts that were visible enough, right? Simple things like that as kids. Maybe we wanted a place where, like, you know, crazy kids wouldn't come. You know, all the guys who ended up turning into, like, drug addicts and the heroin and all of that sort of stuff, they lived at the other side of the road, which was a bit weird, right? There was this, like, road that divided the estate where we grew up. And when these guys would come, you knew that they'd be going in your pockets, or they'd be punching and all of the rest of this stuff. These were the crazy guys. So we often needed a private place to avoid the problems that these folks would bring. You know, these bullies, you know, they take your football. So we would develop the art of like building a den real quick, so we could be in like safety away from the crazy folks. And again, it's resourcefulness. So where do you get your materials to build a den? you go to the places where they're building the new buildings, the new estates. These things have been here for years, and you'd borrow materials, right? So you'd climb over the fence and you grab a bunch of stuff and you'd go and build a den with it. And that was stuff that a lot of kids, they never got a chance to do. And I think the timing was right for some of this as well. And it was like, oh man, you know, now a lot of folks won't let the kids out. We would be out until the lights came on, and then your mum would shout you, right? Or your auntie or your grandma would shout you. So a lot of that comes from an early age of we needed to do stuff that was not boring, but it was also safe, and we didn't have any money or resource to do that at all. And I don't know whether, you know, Dave, who I mentioned, he was a big influence in all of this stuff. Some of the kids were forced in, you know, you must be in at this time. We were given a lot more freedom. And I think the parenting, knowing that we could be trusted, and the values, knowing that we were not doing too much crazy stuff, there was a lot of flexibility around that, and we were really allowed to grow. And I think parenting can potentially inhibit development and that resourcefulness just by either providing everything or limiting the activities that one may be able to do, right? So we were allowed to go and, you know, if you got too wet, you'd probably get in trouble, right? But you could go out there and you could be out in the rain, for example, knowing that when you came in, you could get dry. And some kids, oh, it's raining, you're not allowed out now for 3 days until it stops.
Mm-hmm.
We got the chance to be creative and play and do weird and wonderful stuff.
I love that you went there, because I'm going to go there too. You know, James and I often talk about this. We grew up completely different, the opposite. For me, it was, I didn't grow up in a place where there were obvious drugs. I grew up in a tiny little town in Bosnia, in Yugoslavia. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't like that. It wasn't England, you know what I mean? Like, it was small. And, but there was no curfew. It was just like I could do anything, right? And because there was nothing, there were no boundaries, there was no oversight in any way. Like I didn't do anything, right? I didn't do much, and then because I didn't think anybody cared, right? It was just kind of like anything goes. And for James, it was the opposite, right? It was his parents ran a tight ship, for lack of a better term.
Well, we had the freedom to go out on our bikes and do things and get in trouble. And we would go not to a construction site, but we would go to like the junkyard, or like we call it the dump, and go get, you know, parts from refrigerators or branches or whatever we want. We would make stuff out of that. But like if it was time to come home at this certain time, and if I was 1 minute over, it was just like, all right, now you're grounded for a week. So it was kind of like the consequences were really steep for failure. For sure. Yeah.
So it's kind of, as you were talking, it reminds me of the quote by Jordan Peterson, where he says, you have to let your kids do dangerous things in a safe environment. I think something like that, right? So that's kind of, you created your own safe environment, even though it wasn't safe around you.
Yeah.
You did some daring things. You got creative. You got resourceful. You were driven because you were so motivated to become a DJ. So you had a goal, right? You had a destination, and you were going to do whatever you needed to do. And how did that, you developed that at a very young age. So how did that aid you or help you where you are today?
I think when we got to sort of like 17, 18 and the internet was emerging and we wanted to do music more, I think the majority of the things that I've ever got involved in or started have been, you know, when you kind of get that, like, I need to do this. And it's like, right, so I want to be a DJ. But the opportunity, the window of opportunity is usually quite small. And there's always that ability to do it very, very quickly. So we need a website, but rather than, oh man, this is going to cost money. And I think I went to see this lady that I remember, she had this, I don't know, it was like a mall or some stuff, but that was all I remember, right? So this lady, she had this huge, like hairy mole on her face. She's something out of like a Roald Dahl book, right? And no disrespect to anybody who's got anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I'm sure that, go and get it sorted, right? But I just remember this lady, and she was the business advisor. And I had to go there because we wanted money to be DJs. And we've gone to this thing and sat down, and I just remember this lady talking to me, but I was totally distracted wrongly as a child by this thing on her face, which was, she was pleasant lazy, right? And I was like, oh man. So all I could remember was that. And when you're talking to somebody and you're kind of distracted and you're a kid and you're not supposed to look because it's rude.
Yeah.
But this thing was like taking over the conversation. I was like, oh. And I remember she turned kind of like nasty in the middle of the conversation. And she kind of switched on this, what I believe to be, because it was quite a good idea and there was a good chance of getting the funding, and we were trying to be really proactive and energetic about it, she tried to play it down, and she tried to put a lid on it, and she tried to move from getting started to what will happen if you don't pay your tax. And that was her like limit of knowledge. She was like the tax lady, and she was all legal and everything above board. And it's got to be business plan. It's got to be strategy. It's got to be structure. And we're like, dude, I'm 17. I don't know anything with this stuff. They don't teach us in school. I'm from the worst area of Preston, where everybody's like either dead or in jail or on crack. And we're really looking for a way out of this.
Yeah.
And you're ever trying to like ask for something and you keep getting shut down. And he was like, why are you now making me? And I came out of that thing thinking, talking to folks like this is never going to enable anything to happen because they're limited by their own beliefs, right? And I came and I thought, man, like some of these DJ guys are crazy, right? These are the guys who are potentially selling the drugs, right? Some of these are like the gangster guys. I don't really know all of these. All I know is that we need to have music equipment fast. That's like a motivator, right? Of like, I've got to get this right, because not only is it going to be cool and it's going to kind of help further preserve our existence from other bullies or people who want to do crazy stuff to us, because now I look at the circle that I've managed to find myself in, like the cool kids, if you would. And these are the guys who are going to be a shield, but also be a source of income and let me do some fun stuff. Probably made some bad choices, circle of friends in the wider, but the closer circle was pretty neat. And it was like, we can't allow society to put a lid on that, like an education system or some woman who's in an office and she's been there all her life and, she's like limited by her own beliefs. So I was like, how? There must be another way. And we kind of figured that out. And the big lesson, I think, from all of this is the ability to ask. And if you get refused, to ask again.
Yes.
And that's like, it was an early realization, and then when we got the funding.
Yeah. And does that mean that you went to ask different people, better people who would?
We asked elsewhere, right? So we got, oh no, you just got to do this thing, and what happens if you don't get it right, and you're going to pay tax, and there's going to be all these problems, and it's never going to work. You are not the person to help me.
Exactly.
So found the person who was.
I love how resilient you were. I think resilience is so important as entrepreneurs, and there will be no's, right?
Yeah.
There will be no's. There will be failures, right? We don't call them failures. We call them data. We call them learning now. But it's so important to have this. And I want to tie it back briefly, and then we'll come back to the present, because one element that I've sort of extracted from this conversation is the fact that struggles early on, a lack of resources, led to resourcefulness. So growing up, you had desires, had obstacles, constructed ladders or ramps to overcome those obstacles and come out on the other side and win. So neurologically, you've got now this wiring of like, okay, if I do these things, it might be harder than the guy down the street. I will still get it.
Yeah,
I'm unstoppable. And that really gets in your head in a good way. And is like when I see you work, when I see you do your thing, there is no obstacle that you can't figure out. You're going to find a way no matter what. You're going to talk to the person, you're going to make the ask, you're going to, ask 20 people if you need to get it done. So it's just cool to see like the genesis of it and how it presents itself today.
Without a doubt. And I think that the big thing is asking. And I tell one of the kids who we used to hang around was a very good friend, and he never developed the art of asking. And he, we would all want to go out and do certain things with, hey, Mom, I want some money. We want to go, bowling, go-kart, whatever it is, right? And they would have a very small amount of money, but that was worth the payoff to get rid of the kids. So you think like Saturday, you don't want the kids running around, right? There's some stuff going on. Maybe it was £2 or like $3, whatever it is, right? So you could probably get that from your mum on a Saturday. You couldn't get it every day, right? So we had to be resourceful throughout the week. But you could only get it for certain things, and you develop the understanding of what that transaction looked like. So you'd have to ask, but in a certain way, knowing that the parents would see value in that transaction, right? So that's a lesson that we kind of can apply to today. But my buddy, he never figured it out, and he would kind of go in there and he'd, make his mum a cup of tea or sit at the end of the couch, like look at her, and she'd be like, "What's wrong? Are you not going out?" And he don't know what to say, and he'd be quiet and all the rest of it. A few years ago, we were fishing and we got a call, and he'd passed away. The guy's like, no more. And we got this call from another friend who's like, dude, Anthony's died. And we're like, ah. And he never developed that skill of asking. And I always wonder if that's something that's held him back in life or led him to leave a certain caliber of life where he wasn't living the best. And ultimately he's younger than me and he's no longer with us. And you just think, oh man. So that always like hits me hard and resonates back. That's like those skills that we developed when we were kids. And you could see other kids that never had those skills. Sometimes we'd have to ask his mum for him.
Yeah.
But like, if you've got some idea or some crazy scheme, even if you don't know whether it'll work or not, you must have a vision in that. It's like, if we did this, this could possibly happen. That's enough. Go and ask. It's like when they ring up and say they found you dead, you're asking no one, right? So it's like, do it sooner than later.
I want to lean into that. This is a totally tangential thing, but so I'm part of this men's community circle where we get together and we talk about it's kind of like this yogic spirituality thing, and it's just a bunch of guys in a circle and we're asking questions like, what's coming up for you, what's hard for you, and we will literally go around the circle and say like, how present are you? Rate yourself from 1 to 10. How present and available are you to this current situation? How much energy is in you? How much can you bring to the table? And one of the things that spurs this feeling of aliveness or this kind of score is this notion of being aware of your death, right? Yeah. Do you, and we've never talked about anything like this before. This is totally random, but you have this notion of being, we have this concrete example, and I believe you're living differently than that. So I'm wondering if you have this sort of this awareness or this realization that life is fragile, temporary, short-lived, and does that enliven you and push you at all in your day-to-day business?
I think it's very important to consider that in your own mind. It's not, folks can get, crazy health anxieties or become depressed by overthinking about things like that, right? And then we've got another problem. So it's like, how do you balance the equation? What's the probability of, dying right now? Hopefully, there's always a balance, right? So it's like, well, maybe I'll make it through a few more days, weeks, months, years. And in that time, what can I do to get the most out of that? Does that involve asking somebody what might be perceived as a difficult question? Hey, can I come and help out in your Facebook group? Is not a difficult question, right? Hey, can I jump on a podcast with you? It's not a difficult question. Hey, have you got $500,000 so I can fund this crazy thing that we're both going to benefit from? I don't know what to say. Yeah. You say those exact words, right? It's like, hey, but you've got to show the value. It's got to understand the transaction. But if you realize that at some point it's all over or you're going to run out of time, then it kind of makes sense to do it sooner. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Completely.
Yeah, absolutely. That what you were talking about, it hits so many points in my mind. And I was just blown away by your transformation and your buddy Anthony, as you said, as you named him, because most of us in our community, the people that we get to interact with, did not grow up wealthy or abundant, or not even necessarily with great support from their family of origin or community. And when we take things at the face value, when we say, well, it just is what it is, this is where we're from, this is how we are, this is who we are, our religion doesn't deserve that, our community doesn't deserve that, our whatever, when we develop these global beliefs of this is just how things are, we are going to sit at the edge of the couch and just be like, nothing, I don't need anything, I'm good, right? And or we can say, well, I'm going to be the first one to change this, right? I want to be the one. I want these kids who are a year, 2, 5, 10 years younger than me. I want them to say, well, Danny did that. If Danny can do it, I can do it, right? And those are the Dannys of the world, at least in my community where I grew up. They're the crazy ones, right? They're like, oh, that guy's crazy, don't follow him just because he's an outlier. But when the crazy guy goes out there and and creates a healthy family, healthy marriage, financial wellness, as I like to call it, creates a safe environment for his kid, allows his kid to stand on the shoulders of this giant, whatever the giant Danny is, and grow bigger and create more and serve more. Now it's like, well, maybe he's not that crazy, right? Maybe he's right.
Who knows? I think I'd rather be wrong than never try.
Mm-hmm.
And if the kids can pick up on that, then that's amazing. Because, like I said, folks, if we went back to the class of whatever it was, the primary school, the first school, in the community where we kind of grew up, I could easily name 10 that have passed away who were younger than me or a similar age. There's a bunch who are probably in jail. And there's, because of the drugs and stuff, there's a lot who have got like one leg, where they've had to have the amputation because there's like they've been injecting in the legs and all that. It's horrible, but that's the nature of the place, air quality and all of the rest of it in that area. And then there's a lot of folks who are, this is it. So, they might have a job and they look after the kids and they're great people, but there's no ability to think outside of the dome that's been placed over them. And if you get into like the welfare or benefits as it is in the UK, those people, just like the tax advisor lady, they will put the lid on you in 2 seconds. So especially if they get a glimpse that you could actually outshine them. And I always look at like, we had a mathematics teacher, Mr. Hornby, right? This dude, Mr. Hornby. And Mr. Hornby, his shoes were like held together by tape, right? So Mr. Hornby clearly wasn't doing a great, like he wasn't making a whole heap of money unless he was sending it somewhere, right? I don't know where he's putting his money, but he clearly wasn't spending it on his own self. So when Mr. Hornby would stand in front of a class and say to you, hey, you need to listen to me so you can be like me. I like, dude, you're the last person in the whole world that I want to be like.
Yeah.
Because you're horrible. Job. You hate the kids in the classroom. You're always aggressive and your shoes are held together with tape. So quite quickly but unfortunately, a bunch of kids in there have probably grown up like Mr. Hornby.
Yeah.
And what can you do, right? So it's like the ability to recognize, is this a good route that we are going down now? And if it's not, like, what can we do to change that direction real quick? And who do we need to ask to move to the next track or the next lane before you run out of time?
Yeah. Here's what comes up for me, Danny. When we think about people who actually grow up to be like Mr. Hornby, right? These are the people who believe that it's much safer to
Your own
grow
path.
up and be like him than it is to go out there and do your own thing, right? And ask.
Yeah.
And again, kind of brings us back to your ability to your skill and your muscle of resourcefulness, because someone like you who has developed this muscle of resourcefulness figured out, it may not be safe out there. It may not be the best decision. It may be the wrong choice. I may get crappy results, but I believe that I'm resourceful enough that even if that happens, I'm going to build something from there, right? I'm going to learn something from it, and I'm going to do more, right? As long as I don't stop, as long as I don't say no to myself, as long as I don't talk about what if the taxes and this and that, right? As long as I don't do that, I'm going to win at some point.
Yeah, quite. Because we have accountants and they do a real good job at sorting out your tax, right? You send them a big bunch of crap in a box of receipts and stuff, pay them a bunch of money, and they sort it out. I'd like to make some money before I worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And in most countries, right, you're allowed to make a certain amount before you pay any tax. It's kind of like they're getting started. But this lady would have you believe that you should not start because of this fear. That's like, you're killing people's dreams. Like, don't be a dream killer.
Get to try anything.
Yeah, don't be a dream killer. There's so many people whose dreams are dead in the water right now. And I told the story about the 2 Comma Club Road, right, at Funnel Hacking Live, and there was the guy looking down where all the stickers are on the floor for the 2 Comma Club winners. And he was like, "Oh, can you tell me what these are?" And I said, every name on there has earned at least $1 million with the software, right, with ClickFunnels. And he's like, "Whoa, I had a dream once. And I always went, but I'm too old and I'm retiring soon and I'm at this boring medical conference." And I'm like, "Dude, buy a ticket. We'll get you in, anything we can to get you to walk down the road." And his buddy shouted him from the door, Dave or whatever he's called, "It's time to come back." And he sort of turned and walked. And then he gave that one last glance over his shoulder down the 2 Comma Road.
Oh, man.
And at that point, the dream died, right? Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. Walk down that. You can get pissed off because your name isn't on there yet, but don't let it be a catalyst for inaction.
Many people have been that guy. Myself, I have been that guy, right? I've been that version of that guy at some point in my life, and you have been that guy at some point in your life. And it doesn't sound like you've been that guy, Danny. So that's awesome to have you as a friend. But the many people who actually tune into our podcast who have been that guy, right?
Yeah.
And it's never too late. Even today, maybe he did buy a ticket to the next.
I hope so. It's like you sat there thinking, it's not over yet. Well, now maybe try and do some of the stuff that scared you.
Yeah, because it's gonna get you anyway.
Yeah, without a doubt, right? But you've got to be sensible in the approach. And you can see like Navneet's here and a few other folks in the comments right now. And, try and use these stories to empower people. There's a lot more stories, that reinforce that. But I think it's more like create your own story. And quite often, I guess like Mr. Hornby, he would just recite the textbooks, right? There's a point where you've got to stop reading them and start writing them. And it's like, at which point are you going to do that?
Yeah. So I'm curious, Danny, most of the people who actually listen to this podcast are people who are kind of in that conversation, like you and that, let's call him Mr. David, like that guy who came, and they're curious, right? They're like, what is this? Who is this? Who is this for? Who's doing this? How are they doing it, right? Most people are curious. They haven't turned away. They haven't yet heard the voice of their body who told them to turn around, right? They haven't yet. So they're still looking. They're still curious. Yeah. What would you say to those people?
The one thing that's going to make you turn away is that the fear of the unknown, because you've got the comfort zone behind you, right? And you know what's in that area. And the fear of the unknown is like, well, if I just abandon my buddies at this conference right now, run down this road into who knows what and pay $1,000 to do, I don't even know what's going to happen because some crazy dude with a beard just told me that all these folks have made $1 million. That's probably risky. I think believe a little bit more but you do your diligence as well. He could have gone and got the leaflet to read more information, but like I said, it comes to a point where you've consumed all of the information that you possibly could ever consume, right? At this point of, Russell Brunson's been doing this stuff for years. He's been telling people you one funnel away for years. There's a big stack of us with 2 Comma Club awards. Your funnels are clearly a route to release some kind of financial freedom in your life. So is the entrepreneurial journey. And you still want more information. It's time to start doing a little bit of this stuff, right? And you can kind of dip your toe in and get a result. And I think we're talking about this on our ambassador thing yesterday, is like, get one result, but that result might just be in clear of the direction. And what I see a lot is that people, they know about the funnels and they know about the tech and the Facebook ads and all of this stuff, and it's still overwhelming, but they just don't have the, what is it that I do? So if if I said to you, hey, what do you do right now? What do you do? You should be able to answer that, right? So it's like, hey, I help entrepreneurs to achieve their goals, and I do that through, a plan, a pathway, and principles. If that's what you do, that's what you do, right? But everything else should then not be relevant. So, hey, I'm a DJ and I play music. That's what I do, right? I help kids to break free from poverty. That's what you do, right? We groom dogs and make them look nicer. That's what you do, right? But I think a lot of people is like, well, I do this thing here, and then I do this thing here, and then I do this thing. And it comes back to the beginning. You said, oh, Danny, you're popping up everywhere. But everywhere I pop up, the messaging is the same, and the results that I want people to achieve are the same. The outcome is the same. I help people to achieve their goals, and I'm doing that through trying to give them a plan, trying to show them some principles that will underpin that plan and give them a pathway to success. Funnels and such are just a tool, right? The stream is just a tool. So stop consuming the information, take a risk, ask some folks for help, and take a step forward today. That's what they say, take action. And nobody knows what that means. Like run traffic, nobody knows what that means. Give value, nobody knows what that means. Ask.
Yeah.
I want to tie together a couple of things, because you're talking about showing up everywhere, right? And you're also talking about helping people to achieve their goals through business. You also said, it's time to start reading books. It's time to start writing one.
Yeah.
Well, you are writing a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm just waiting. There's one piece before I reveal this thing, so everybody can kind of get a fraction from it, and it can be the biggest thing possible. But it's the book is irrelevant in a sense. It's more about the messaging of the people, because I've interviewed a bunch of people, right? So you're one of these folks, and Navneet's on there. We called it Funnel Book. It's a 4-part series, and we've literally interviewed 100 people who have done something in business. But some of these folks have not started yet. They've just taken the first step. Some of these are, I don't know, millionaires, right? There's actually a golden thread that underpins all, like kind of runs through all of this. And what I'm trying to do is pick out the key messages and say, look, 100 people can't be wrong, right? Yeah. If this one thing is common in every single person, whether they're just starting, they're halfway there, or they've made it twice and come back again and gone in a different direction, like that's something that is probably going to be valuable to you. And we recorded an insane amount of interviews, and there are some commonalities and some common threads. And the one big thing that ties all this together is every single one of them knew what they wanted and they asked for it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, which goes back to like this is really like a continuous story arc from the beginning of your journey. Asking for the bowling money, asking for to get the money from the lender, asking to do all these things, and now you're saying like that's the key is just asking to have permission to be a player on the field.
And for me, good people die early, or the good people let their dreams die early, because like your friend Anthony, and this is something that hit me, I firmly believe that the first step to receiving is giving. You got to put the money in the bank before you can pull it out, right? So thinking about your friend Anthony, right? He would give to his mom, right? He would make a cup of tea and he would give it to her. So he did the first step, right? He gave. Then he sat there on the edge of the couch. He showed up, right? He gave, he showed up. He just didn't ask. I mean, he knew what he wanted. He gave, he showed up. He just didn't ask.
And it kills me every time, right? And it's like he didn't understand the transaction that was how the transaction worked. And thinking back to everything, apart from the lady who like didn't really do much, you know, and she wasn't actually the person I was asking, right? She was the person who was trying to advise me of what I needed to do. That was a different transaction in itself. But generally, when I ask for stuff, people usually say yes, because there's 99.9% of the other people who are not bothered to ask. They don't want to ask. They're scared to ask. They never ask. So I'm in that 0. Never mind the 1% crazy. It's like the 0.1% crazy, right? Because nobody else is asking. So like that's how we did the ClickFunnels thing. That's how we did the Secrets of Success thing. That's why I'm on a live with Rex Sykes. That's why I'm speaking at the LA Tribune thing. That's why we did internet radio, and like all of the stuff that I've ever done is because, yes, I wanted to do it. I knew that it would help people. I would get fulfillment out of it. But it's like I asked for it.
And you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because, you know, again, there's a framework, right? You know what you wanted, right? You showed up, you gave, right? You are, as we call it, added value, whatever that means. And you're asking for something in return. And asking is, when you ask for something, let's say if our daughter was sick or something, and if we didn't have, I would have no problem asking, right? But somehow we have very often we have a hard time asking for ourselves. Yeah. So, and that's okay, right? I do coaching a lot, and when people say, well, I can't really ask for myself, I could ask for my kid, but I couldn't ask for myself. That's fine. I could spend the next 3 years convincing you to ask for yourself, or I could say, well, fine, just ask for your kid, ask for your community, ask for something, right? Yeah. Bypass the you and just ask for whatever that greater good is for you, right?
Yeah. And I think that is important, because a lot of the asks that I've had permission for was a group of DJs, was a bunch of kids in a community. It's never just me.
Yeah.
You know, of course there has been times it's just me, right? So it's like, but I will always try and tie in other people into that ask, because it makes asking easier, but it also creates a bigger amount of value for the person you're asking, and the more inclined to say yes, right? Peer pressure is a thing. And you know, if we wanted to get funding out of a chief executive at a council, I would get other people to highlight the fact that I was going to ask. Has Danny spoke to you yet? And they'd be like, no idea what. But it's like this sort of like pincer movement, right? So if you want to go after your Dream 100, you know, #1 top player in the industry, you want to go and work with whoever, it's a good idea to make friends with all of the people that serve that person, or that person serves, before you ask.
Yeah.
You don't just ring up and ask now. They don't know who you are, right? But then all of a sudden they're like, this guy keeps popping up all over the place, right? And eventually you just like, hey, I've got this idea. Are you interested? And they'll either say yes or no.
Yeah.
Chances are they'll say yes, because nobody else is asking, or they're asking in a weird way.
Yeah.
Right? There's like
asking for permission to ask, right?
Yeah, it's like this weird ask thing that people do, where it's not the full, like, exactly what we want in 2 seconds. It's this long drawn out, like, I'm here, but I'm not saying anything kind of thing, and it's weird. And it's just like, you just cut that and just like ask.
Yeah,
it's like dead simple. Like, hey James, I've got a challenge coming up that supports the funnel, but do you want to speak at that challenge? That's a genuine ask, right? James said yes, right, done, simple. And we make a date, we put it in the diary, and James speaks at the challenge. Both of you could join as a team. That'd be amazing, and that'd be even cooler, right? If we both got time to do it, I'll send the details and we'll do it. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Hell yeah. Let's go. See, that's Danny asking live right here, you know, and us obviously responding immediately. And we love it, right? People within our community, or people that we serve, or people that this is a very altruistic community, right? Very much service-oriented community.
Yeah.
And so when you ask within this community, it's kind of like allowing yourself to suck at it. It's like, okay, you know, you're surrounded by, generally speaking, kind, service-oriented people. Practice amongst these people.
Yeah.
They're gonna hold you, and then you can go out there and ask other people who are not necessarily service-oriented, but you're gonna have that many steps, right? You're gonna have traveled that path.
Not asking leaves you in situations you don't want to be in, right? So you've got a crappy relationship. You need to ask. You don't have a relationship. You need to ask. You need to ask for the date. You need to ask for the raise. You need to ask for the job. You need to ask for the path to the career. You need to ask for the opportunity. You need to ask, hey, open the door. It's like the door won't open, right? Unless you ask, because nobody knows you're there. What do you think you're doing when you're knocking? It's like you're signifying that you want something to happen, right? So it might not necessarily be, please, can I? It could be a message. It could be a knock. It could be, sometimes you've got to like pound on the door a little bit. Sometimes you've got to climb through the window, but there's different ways of going about things. And if you know that your goal is something that's going to help people and that your intentions are pure and correct, if you want to go and do some dodgy crime, chances are people are going to say no, right? So as long as you're doing some stuff that's going to help people and you've got pure intention and your heart's in the right place, chances are if they do say no, they're probably going to make a suggestion that's going to help you anyway. That's probably going to help you on the. It's like, hey, I can't do that right now, but I know if you go and speak to this person, they probably can. But you never even get that hint of the different route, right? If you don't ask, do something.
And people like to also. That's really important because. For me, I only ever really do speak from personal experience. For me, it used to be, if I wanted something, I learned to cry. And then people would come to me and ask me, well, what's wrong, right? And it doesn't have to be that, when we're grown-ups, we don't necessarily cry, right? But we do something similar.
Yeah.
We say, I don't need you. I don't need anything. I'm fine on my own. I'm just going to do this. I like my job, right? We kind of do the same thing, not necessarily as little Alma crying and waiting for someone else to ask her, but really something in that neighborhood.
Or cries for attention.
Cries for
like
attention.
Withdrawn or something, yeah.
Exactly. Cold shoulder, withdrawn. And so we're still actually asking, but we're asking for the person to ask us. And when you do that, you're giving them all the power. You're stripping yourself of all the power. And you kind of, maybe they're going to ask, maybe they're going to say, screw you. Maybe they're going to be like, you're too much of a liability. I don't have time for that. Right? And very, very few people are actually going to say, well, what is it that you need? Because I'm not 5. They don't need to come to me and ask me, what is it that I need, right? As a grown person, you have to ask in a specific, direct way.
100%. And it comes back to my buddy who would try and make his mum a cup of tea and then sit at the end of the sofa waiting for her to say, what's wrong? Are you not going out? Is there nothing you can do? To the point where she's like, get out of the house. There's money. Take the money. I don't want you here. I just want to drink some beer or so, whatever she wanted to do. Like the husband's coming around, our boyfriend's coming around, whatever she was doing, right? It was a long time ago. So, they might have wanted to go out without the kids. Yeah. So she was probably praying that he asked.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand the transaction and the value and the asking part is probably the easiest bit, but it's the bit that people fall down on. And if you're not asking and you're not positioning yourself in a position to ask, your choices or chances in life, opportunities are limited. And it's not limited by design. It's limited by that one thing. And, whoever's watching, Loris, Nilesh, Navneet, whoever's in the chat right now, go and make a pledge to yourself that you're just going to ask for one thing that you actually want today and see how far it gets you and report back and let us know in like the replay comments or whatever. Drop us a message. What happened when you did that? Because the chances are it's totally different to the anxiety and the worry about if only.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
ask for everything. Ask for anything, right? Ask your spouse, your partner, your friend, your child, your boss, if you have a boss still,
Yeah.
your team. Just start asking, hey, can you reach this for me? Can you do this? Well, I have an idea. Can we do this? Well, how do you feel about that? Right. And it's just building that muscle of asking.
Rejection never feels as bad as you think it might in your head before you do the thing.
Yeah, that holds you back so much. Is the like, oh, what if, right? Somebody ain't got time to sit there dwelling if they've said no. They might, oh, so you won't believe what somebody asked me earlier, and I just said no, and somebody said, well, what did you say no for? Like, what? How does that conversation continue? I can't imagine that conversation, right? Because it's usually something people keep to themselves. It's not something they're going to go and do a video about on social media. All of the things that I said no to. It's probably going to stay with them, right? But if they say yes, they're going to help you to blow that up because it's in their interest.
Yeah.
I was like, there's more benefit in the asking.
All right, Danny. Speaking of asking, I want to give you the opportunity to ask all the audience that's listening and watching right now, what are you working on right now? What do you want attention to? What kind of links can you drop? How should people get a hold of to ride the wave that is Danny Walsh at this moment in time?
Just find me on Facebook. At the top of my Facebook, there's a thing that shows when I'm doing lives. Later today, we're on Funnel Hacker TV, and then we're in the ClickFunnels group with ambassadors. I've got stuff going on. I'm actually doing a giveaway. You can enter that. I'm giving away a big bunch of stuff. I don't even know how much it's worth, but I'm going to drop that later on. That's going to be fun. What else? I've got some training that shows you how to create a framework in your business that kind of precedes anything you would ever do in funnels. And the funnel is not the focus, which might scare everybody to death, but it kind of makes sense to have your plan first. So there's a piece of training done around that. All this stuff is usually free. You're more than welcome to come and take it. If anybody wants me to talk and do stuff and get involved, feel free, hit me up, find me on Facebook. There's no hard sell because it's literally like, I know the benefit of doing that, and I know what we can do if we get together and come up with a scheme. And if we do come up with a scheme, I'm more than happy to go and ask for the things we need to make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you, Danny. This was such a pleasure. I just love talking to people about their personal experiences, because there is a journey that we've all been on that got us to where we are now. And the more successful that you get, the further away you may seem to other people. It's like, oh, that's Danny. That's just, good for him, or must be nice.
He's on the stage. He's live in this group. Right. He's got all this stuff. But he's at the top of the mountain. Yeah.
But
maybe people could just ask me something and see where it gets them, right?
Yes.
Because there's a good chance that it'll go in the favor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This information, do as you please. But you guys are awesome, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Danny, and thank you to everyone who joined us. And we can't wait to read the comments and have Danny respond to them.
All right, everyone. See you next week. Bye.